All right, welcome back to Power Forward. Justin White alongside Mateen Cleaves. Mateen, what's going on, my man?
Oh, it's going. Oh, yeah, I'm flying high, man. Life is good, man. Let's go.
All right, well, let's have at it. And I'm really excited about this episode, Mateen, because our guest today, first time I talked to her, we just connected. And just listening to her talk, it got me excited, to hear her message on the podcast and have her share her insights with our listeners. And one of the things that she believes in, and we're going to ask her about this, that really stood out to me is the importance of being your own advocate at any stage of life. Whether you're in business, whether you're in sports, if you're not your own biggest fan, Mateen, who else is going to be, right?
100%. And hey, listen, you got to be. I love that. That's so true, Justin.
Well, we're going to get into that with Gina Coleman. She is the Chief Sales Officer at Mass Mutual Great Lakes. Gina, thanks so much for joining us on Power Forward.
I'm happy to be here.
So let's jump right in with that because, there are lots of things I want to talk to you about. But that notion of being your own advocate and really letting people know what you want, where for you did that come from?
I think it came from the fact that I felt branding was important. And the only way that you can control your own brand is to control your own messaging and being your own advocate. And so unlike probably Mateen and other athletes that may have media that is able to tell their story or be their advocate or coaches or people in life. I was the first in my family out of 7 to go to college. And so it was all brand new to me. And so I didn't have sort of a playbook to run from. So I figured, hey, I'm going to have to create my own brand. And that's how I approached it.
Oh, man, oh my God, I'm so glad. Listeners, I hope you are paying attention because that's important. And like Justin said, if you can't advocate for yourself, then who will? And there's people listening, Gina, right now that may be thinking, I don't want to be looked at as being arrogant, or I don't want to be looked at, so what advice would you have for folk that's kind of weary of being their own advocate?
Yeah, I would say the reason why I didn't think it came off as arrogant for me was because I only highlighted the things that I did for others. So when I was able to be supportive of someone else's goals and helping them get to where they're needing to be or wanting to be, before I asked for help for what I needed, I wanted to be there for them. And so it was a controlled way that I did it. So if someone thanked me for something and shot me an email, all I asked them to do was, can you resend the email and copy my boss and copy your boss? I want you to thank me in front of a broader audience. And it wasn't because I walked in a room and said, hey, look at me, praise me, I'm the greatest. It's not that. It was, I demonstrated value to you and all I wanted you to do was be my mouthpiece.
I love it.
It's a pretty brilliant strategy when you think about it. It's a very simple ask, but it can really do a lot in terms of, what that effect can be for you and your ability to move up in your career. Yeah. So before we get any further, I want you to explain to our listeners just your story and how you got to where you are. You work in the world of finance right now, helping families, helping people, build financial freedom. But this was not the plan for you from the start, right?
No, not at all. Matter of fact, I enjoyed high school so much. I was one of those folks that was engaged in so many different groups. I was class secretary. I played sports. So I loved high school so much. I didn't even think about what I wanted to be when I grew up. So towards actually the end of my middle of my senior year was when I said, the teacher came to me and said, Gina, you've got to apply to college. You got to, figure out what you want to do next. And so I entered into college not knowing what I wanted to do and found a major that allowed me to learn the business side of hotel restaurant management, event planning. And it was like a hodgepodge of events. So I went into college not knowing what I wanted to do, but started in sports, then became a entrepreneur, running and operating my own spa and salon, and then ultimately ended up in financial services. So a very unique path that we can dig in a little later. But it's one of the stories that I like to share with college students don't worry if you don't know what you want to be, because that's what everybody asks. The key is what I've learned is find out what your strengths are, and most likely once you know your strengths, they can be convertible to different industries. And so that has proven to be the case with me. So in my 40s, I found myself in the financial services world, and I'm turning 52 this year, and I love it.
I love that. And listen, man, big time stuff. And you mentioned sports, and I come from a sports background, and sports helped me out so much. And even doing the other, being a part of other extracurricular activities, it did dividends for myself as I moved forward when I started to get into business or corporate America per se. So for you, was the sports and dabbling in other extracurricular activities, did that help you as you start to move forward in business?
I will say that, I got my internship with the New Jersey Nets. That's how my sports career started. I actually had a opportunity with a PR firm in New York and in sports, and I didn't know anything about basketball at all. I remember walking into the office, and Willis Reed was our general manager at the time, and I came home and told my parents, I said, I talked to what's his name, Willis Reed, and my dad was like, oh my God, you talked to Willis Reed. And I'm like, I don't know who I just talked to. But what it taught me, because I didn't know the industry, I learned about the business. I learned about the business side of sports. And sports is exciting. It's something that always lights people's eyes up. So it was one of the things that it does come with a certain level of excitement, and which is why a lot of people want to get into sports. But in sports, you're not going to make a lot of money until you're not on the court. You're not making a ton of money unless you're like in the upper echelon. So it was a great start to my career, and it opened up a whole other world for me. And which is what sports does in general. I try to tell young athletes, like, being a player is awesome. Look bigger. Right? Look at the business side of sports, because it can be just as exciting and just in a wonderful career path, not limited to a court or a field. But I will say it's been throughout my career. In every role that I've had a connection back to what I learned in sports, from marketing, from sponsorships, from building great relationships that continue to have dividends. And so it's something about sports that pulls that out of everyone.
You mentioned all the different roles that you held with the Nets, and obviously you pivoted, you left the Nets at a certain point. I'm curious, though, as you were just talking, I was thinking about the fact that how much the landscape has changed in sports, especially in terms of women advancing. You look at Kim Ng in Miami with the Marlins, becoming the first female general manager for Major League Baseball. You've got Becky Hammon, an assistant coach with the San Antonio Spurs, could become the first female head coach in NBA history. When you think about the progress women have made, and you think back to your time, and I remember you told me you actually wanted to work for the New York Giants.
Oh my gosh, football was my love. Now, I knew football.
And you said at the time they didn't hire females.
They told me when I reached out after I sent them my resume, and I said, hey, I haven't heard back. I'm looking for a summer internship. And they was like, oh yeah, we don't hire female interns. So first, my heart was broken because this is my team saying no to me. But second, I realized I really didn't know what to say. I hadn't found my voice then. And I don't think it was a lot of, I think the women that were breaking into the industry during the early 90s was really on the media side, right? They, reporters, and not necessarily team-based. And even in my internship class, it was me and another young lady. We called ourselves Salt and Pepper, and we were with our like 5 other guys that were in the internship at the same time. And what I realized, though, with being with the Nets, they asked me to stay on. They asked the whole internship class to stay on full time. They were starting a telemarketing campaign. What I realized is it really depends on the leadership, who owns the team, who's making the decisions. Even back then, I had great We had great presidents. I had great sales managers and leaders because I continued to grow. After the mid-90s lockout at the NBA, David Stern required every team to have a separate community relations department. And it was meant to bring up the image, right, of our players, right? And so they came to me to run that department. And so my personal experience with the team and the folks that I worked with back then, I wouldn't say they were pro-woman. It's just that they elevated women in the career. And so sometimes you don't know it's a big deal until you look around and see how many other teams weren't doing that. It's great to see the opportunities breaking so many different barriers. I'm looking forward to the first female commissioner of any sports one day, but we're getting there. And I think that it's important that other women share their stories. I just did a panel with the WISE Women in Sports and Entertainment group not too long ago with a couple of other representatives from sports around the world, around the country. And it's important for us to share our experiences and share that, there are doors being open and we have to open the doors behind us.
And hold on, I got to take you back a little bit because you said that they said no, okay, but you're sitting pretty good right now. I mean,
I'm still a Giants fan. I love them to death to this day. I'm still a Giants fan.
Yeah, Plexico Burrs is a good friend of mine. Caught the championship touchdown.
I come from the Strahan era. So.
Yes. But my thing is, because there's women that's listening to this that have been told no, and it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. Let's be honest. But you didn't stop. What was it, that kept you going and you didn't just stop there?
I think that the no's never get me down. I remember when I was going back to the job search after my spa business had to transition. And I remember getting back out and really going hard in the job search. And I was getting the no's. And what I wasn't worried about was that the no was there. Maybe God placed that no there. And maybe that's not where I was meant to be. And I try not to take it personal either. All I kept saying is, I'm not going to worry about it because wherever I land, boy, are they going to be lucky. I kept going. Look, between faith and friends and family. And again, we have to be our own advocates and champions. And I always feel like my intention goes beyond just making money. It really is, where can I add the most value and enjoy what I'm doing? And so a no meant that wasn't where I'm meant to be. I went to a big company downtown Detroit that said no to me. And that's in the same industry as you guys. But I really tried to not let it get me down. I felt like wherever I was going to land was where I was supposed to be.
All right. So you're talking to a couple of guys who both transitioned from careers in sports to careers in finance. Mm-hmm. You did the same. So how did you end up in this current gig that you've got at Mass Mutual Great Lakes? Our fearless leader, Manny Amezgua. I happened to also meet a guest on the podcast.
Yes, happened to meet Manny when he first came into the market in 2017. It was at a big corporate breakfast event, and we connected right away. We exchanged cards. He had told me he had just came into the market, and I said, "Hey, I kind of know this landscape pretty well, and if you ever want to connect, let me know." He caught me again a little later in my career. I was coming out of my within my ninth year at PNC Bank, and it was the year I was turning 50 and was thinking, what's next? What could be next? And when I was talking to Manny about the things he was doing over here, and it was funny because he was talking to me like, let's see if we can find ways to partner. And in my conversation, he goes, I go to him, I said, wait a minute, are you trying to recruit me or you really talking about a strategic partnerships? He was like, well, I'm always looking for great talent. So if you're open to the conversation, let's talk. So I think he connected back with me at the time, which happens sometimes when you're turning those milestone birthdays, like what's next? And the what was next was actually something that I was really, really interested in. And so I love the culture over here. I love what his vision is. We have some great things coming down the pike, and I want to help be his partner in being the premier financial planning firm in the state of Michigan.
Wow. And, I was talking the other day to a group of broker owners, and I'm super big on building relationships, man. I'm super big on that because you can be great at what you do. You can work hard. You can do everything you need to do. But sometimes you just don't know the right person. And knowing the right person helps sometimes. So, Gina, can you talk a little bit how, because we got listeners that's tuning in that really needs to know, how important it is to build relationships.
If people who know me know that, they'll say, "Oh, Gina's a great networker, I think it goes beyond just exchanging business cards with people, though. I think talking to people, finding out what their goals for, looking for ways to, again, I go back to where can I add value to someone first before I ask them for something. If someone's talking about what they're doing at their job or what they're looking for, make a recommendation, reconnect, connect after meeting someone. Hey, it was great. Glad that we were both at the DAC attending this event. Would love to kind of, talk to you and, get your feedback. Just take time to just get to know people, get to know what their own dreams are and what their goals are. And seeing about ways that maybe you can add a little bit of value to what they're doing. And I'm telling you, when you do for others, it comes back to you twofold. Never burn bridges. And especially Michigan is such a small world. Now, I come from the New York, New Jersey area. It is not a small world there. It's a huge world. Here, somebody's going to know somebody else. And so it's really important how you show up, that you be genuine. Because if you're fake, you're not going to remember what version of yourself you showed someone. I think being authentic, realizing too that every relationship is not going to be something you're going to garner something from, right? We can't do everything for everybody. But find time to give, find time to especially give to organizations. I belong to 5 different nonprofit organizations. Great way to build relationships. Find ways to give, and I think it'll come back. Stay connected with people. Try to remember things about them so when you see them again, I just think the little things matter.
That dovetails nicely into my next question for you, Gina. And I was listening to another podcast that you were on, and the host asked you about your superpower, I believe was the question. And I thought this was really cool. You said it's that you're comfortable in any room.
I am.
Doesn't matter who you're with. Mm-hmm. You just have this ability to feel comfortable. How has that helped you in your career, and how do you try to counsel others? I mean, that's probably something that just comes naturally. It might not be something you can teach, but how has that helped you in your career, and how do you kind of look at that in terms of, everything you've been able to achieve?
It's helped me tremendously. I actually don't know exactly where it came from, and it could be the way I was raised. I was raised Catholic. I was always in very diverse environments. I went to a VOTech high school, which is, I think is a lost art, where I got a chance to obviously do my business. It was a business focus, but I also did like carpentry. I learned how to do masonry. Like I had all these like different experiences, and I was always around all different cultures. So when I find myself in rooms, even if I'm the only, I never feel out of place. And I feel like everybody puts their pants on the same way, right? Everybody is human, and I do think that obviously, even though people have different positions in life, it doesn't make anyone less than the other. And so that's how I approach it. So you can find me in the neighborhood. You can find me in the boardroom surrounded by all white men with suits and ties, and I'm not going to be intimidated. I'm just happy to be in a room. And I love being around people, too, who are smarter than me or, have more experiences to me, because I want to learn. And so I feel comfortable. And there's always a common ground somewhere. And so I'm always looking for a common ground. And I like to have fun. I'll joke. Even with the Nets, and they were like, oh, the owners are coming in, and everyone was all nervous. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to meet them. And I would just go up and say hello. And I do think people in power, or people with, let's just say, high level positions, don't get that a lot. They see how people are apprehensive or afraid to say something when, I'm not. I feel like them meeting me is almost it's just as fun as meeting, the other way around. And I don't approach it so serious, just I want to meet people. And especially if I want to meet you, if you're only coming into town or in market once a year, I've got to meet you then, because who knows when we're going to meet again. I certainly don't want to just be introduced via LinkedIn. So
maybe that's the advice, right? Maybe that's the advice.
Don't be afraid. Yeah, it's not like I'm running with a camera like, hey, take a selfie with me. I'm just introducing myself, what I do, and providing feedback for what they do. So I'm never afraid of approaching people, especially if I'm going in with good intent.
And that's great advice, Gina. And like I said, I always like to talk in third person a little bit to our listeners, because think about that. Because we do have people that work, and they have CEOs and managers, whoever, and they're afraid to approach them. First of all, and then second of all, they're always looking to get something out of it. It's like, what can the CEO do for me? What can the manager do for me? And you have to think 90% of the people that approach them are looking to get something from them. So if you just go up and say, hey, hi, I'm Mateen Cleaves, I'm Gina, just wanted to meet you, introduce myself. Nice meeting you, That's cool.
Yeah. Or, providing some feedback of what they've just presented on, right? If something resonated with you, share that. Yeah. Hey, you know what you said here resonated with me, and I just wanted you to know that. And I think people in position of power don't maybe get that all the time, right? They're all, I just think it's okay to say, hey, if something resonated, share. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. I don't need anything else from you, but just, thank you for sharing that. It resonated with me.
You mentioned this a few minutes ago, but you are in the unique position of having been both a corporate executive and also an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. You owned a hair salon back in the 2000s. I'm not sure how we should.
Yeah, I owned a hair salon early 2000. And when I moved here to Michigan, I opened up a full service spa and salon.
So tell me, what did you learn from your experience as an entrepreneur that you use in your role as a chief sales officer? And then maybe part two of that question is, what advice do you give other entrepreneurs that you encounter about how they can be successful?
Yeah. What I learned as an entrepreneur is that talent is everything. Finding good talent is so important. Being able to let go of talent that's not working. I mean, it's a skill that's important. The other thing with being an entrepreneur is making sure your paperwork and the administrative side of your business is done. I think sometimes most people start a business based off of passion, right? I realized early on that I wasn't that great at the administrative stuff and bookkeeping stuff, so I needed to invest in someone that can do that. Making sure, especially small business owners, making sure that you're setting up a personal account and a business account. Like just doing the framework of operating a business, especially if you're going into it from a passion standpoint, right? People have hobbies and then they turn into business owners, right? They turn it into a business. Always treat your business like a business. Realize if you have staff that they are going to, they're the ones that's going to deliver your message or deliver your service. Have good people, appreciate the great people that you have. Was the biggest lessons that I found there, and understand how to tell your story of what you're doing, right? And so those are the three biggest things, and always take advantage of the resources that are around. There are so many resources for small business owners, and be open to pivoting. I think sometimes entrepreneurs get so caught up in their own business or product or service that they close their ears to getting advice. Don't be afraid of listening and learning from others who have some experience in whatever it is.
Yeah, gotta be able to adapt. And I remember asking Magic Johnson. I said, what was one of the what was a mistake that you made when you first started? And he said, he made it about himself. And I hear you talking about you got to take care of your people. And so, did you have any mistakes that you made when you first started that you would change, or you wish you would have approached something differently, or anything like that you could share?
Oh yeah, I'm not actually doing a really good business plan, forecasting and planning out. Sometimes we just jump right in and just think, oh, it's just going to turn out. I think the planning is so important. And I think that it would have helped me, better budget, what types of investments I would make, especially in the spa business where you're buying product ahead of time and you're doing all of this. And every time you go to a bank or anybody for a loan, or, you talk about, they always say, the business plan. It's true. You need a roadmap, right? You need a roadmap to your vision. You need a roadmap to your goals and what you're trying to accomplish. And so I kind of did a skinny version of a business plan, but because I was able to fund my business up front, I didn't pay that much attention to it. And I think that people who have money and decide to start a business and they don't have to do like the quote unquote paperwork, right, to get the business planning paperwork to ask somebody for the money, they kind of tend to jump right in without a really good business plan.
Want to ask you about being able to deliver a good pitch, because this is another strength of yours, based on what we know about you, because you do it, for work. You've also done it in situations and it's landed you different roles. I mean, remember, you can tell the story about what happened with PNC when you were in a pitch meeting, but you also said something that really resonated with me. It's you can basically bring ideas to the decision makers and show them where the winds connect. Tell our listeners what that means.
Yeah, I'm big on breaking down silos, especially within a company, because everyone gets so caught up in their own department and what they have to do. I'm a true believer that there are ways to connect between two different areas or two different goals, and like just kind of seeing things differently on how we can still accomplish the same goal, but together, if we help each other out. So I'm already looking at ways here of if we can collaborate a lot more, guess what? We both will rise at the same time, right? And so I guess I'm always looking for the unique ways of how to work together, instead of everyone's like, oh well, these are my clients. I don't want to risk introducing them to my partner over here in this department because this is my client. Well, if we're able to do more for that client, and by bringing in other resources to them, it's going to be they're going to become a stickier client. They're going to be, and they're going to stick around for a lot, and we both get to win. And so I'm always coming to the table on how we can do that, even from a talent perspective. Looking at people who want to grow in their career. Raise your hand, volunteer for other projects, right? Always see where you can add value somewhere else, because I go back to that because it always brings back more. The rising tide lifts all boats has always been sort of the way I think. And I always think that there's opportunities to see it. One of the things I felt I brought into the bank, because I wasn't in financial services, you go into certain companies and people have been there 10, 20 years. And I think they get caught up being in their own world. And bringing in people from the outside will give companies different perspectives, and that's what I think about too when I think about diversity, and bringing more diversity into the workforce, and different voices at the table, because you need another set of eyes to help you to see the things that you're not seeing. And it's not that you're bad because you're not seeing it; it's just that this is the world you've been in. And so I think that I always think companies are much better when they have people from all different backgrounds because then you're just going to just open up a new world.
Like that. And is it a certain way that you deliver those messages? Is it, because I know some people can come in guns a blazing. Oh, I don't like that. That's terrible. Or maybe, have you thought about this? Or so is it a certain way that you deliver those messages?
Yeah, I don't deliver messages right away because I can't walk into a situation or a new company or even a new scenario knowing everything. I'm listening. I'm paying attention. I'm reading I'm a big believer on doing your research and what the company is working on, what their goals are. So I'm the one that's on our internet system, our intranet, reading the stories, always listening to what the CEO is trying to do, listening to visions, because then I think the more you're listening, the more things that can come like, oh, well, this might actually help them in that area. So I would say for the first few months I was at PNC Bank, I was just soaking up everything. I was learning my job. I was soaking up everything. And I really just started to listen and pay attention. And I didn't open my mouth until I felt like I had something valuable to add to the conversation. And I did because I was always up on news and events, and I always paid attention to what was going on with the company, no matter which department. I never just focused on my own department.
I like that. And Justin, I'll let you get your question in, but I want, that's important because what people have to understand sometimes, if you're in the room, you're in there for a reason. So you don't have to just blurt something out to try to show your value.
Exactly.
Yeah, I love that, Gina. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
You talked earlier about some of the great leaders that you had the opportunity to learn from at the Nets. You've obviously now had experience working for other leaders in your career. Mm-hmm. To you, what kind of leader do you try to be every single day? Or if someone was to ask, one of your colleagues or somebody that you did business with, what kind of a leader is Gina? What would you hope that they say?
I hope that they would say that I was, I gave them the space to grow and to lead from their own seat that they're in. I'm not a micromanager type of a manager. I do like things to turn out the way that I want them to turn out. But I've learned to, instead of dictate to someone what they do, I'm like, hey, here's how I'm thinking it should look. What do you think? I hope that they would always feel like Gina's a very inclusive leader, very motivating, tries to pull out innovative ideas, that they're always welcome to share their viewpoint. And that that I'm cool. I'm easy to get along with, and especially at the same time if we're all doing what we're supposed to do. But I'm always asking, what do you think? There are certain things that we have to say, hey, this has to be done, this way, especially as it relates to the financial services industry when there's compliance, right? We have a lot of compliance. But instead of me always dictating, I always say, here's what I think. What do you think? And I want their buy-in, because then I think just that simple sentence, what do you think, makes someone feel like their voice matters. And I want everybody to feel like their voice matters. Yes.
Team, man, I'm listening to you talk, and it's like team. See, I just keep thinking about team because you're talking about other people buying in, other people giving advice, other people idea. When you're trying to win and be super successful, because we can get some self-serving people that just want it to be about themselves. Mm-hmm. But I think, it's much more powerful. And coming from a sports background, I am super big on teams. But to me, I just keep hearing that. So how important is it to have a great team around you if you're trying to be successful in business?
Well, I think it depends on what someone's trying to accomplish in their career or in their field, right? I think some team sports are great for some people, and other people are like golfers. Right. Their competition is themselves, right? And so I also think it's important to understand not everybody is going to be like me, right? I respect the people who operate in a certain way, right? And who want to be very focused and streamlined. Me, I thrive in a team environment, right? So for me to be successful, I like having great teammates. I make it a point to refer to myself as a teammate. Like, I'm your teammate. I don't care what level in the company you are, I'm your teammate. And so teams have been very important to me. But I also respect everybody is not wired the same way. And so if I'm around someone who is very introverted, I try not to go all in, Gina. I try to kind of pull myself back. So I try to be mindful of other people's comfort levels without being too aggressive, and respect people where they are. But invite them into my world when they're comfortable and ready. And I still feel like anybody can be a great teammate to anybody, even if being a great teammate is giving them a little space.
I like it.
I got something I got to ask you. And this goes back to the way we started the show and talking about, being your own advocate and asking for what you want.
Oh, yeah.
So this is your advice, right, to others based on your own experience. So what happens when one of the people on your team comes to you and is basically asking you for what they want and being their own advocate and maybe challenging you? Is that a situation where you say, you know what, good for you, because this is exactly the way that I would have done it?
Oh, absolutely. I've had plenty of times that has happened, and I love it. And I'm like, thank you for saying that. And so it's always welcome. And again, I love it. So I haven't. It never blindsides me, because it's what I'm trying to practice what I preach, and I have to be able to receive that from others as well. And then I always hope that I create the types of relationships that someone could be comfortable sharing what they want. What's been interesting is that I find I'm having to pull it out of especially women more. Like I had someone that I was offering in a role that I was offering the job, and when she basically says, well, to be quite frank, I need a little bit more money, and I'm looking for this amount. It wasn't much more, but most people have, most hiring managers have a cushion that they're working with, and they're making an offer. That's a little inside secret, but when she asked for more because she felt she deserved it, I'm like, okay, so I know what my own budget is, right? But I gotta say, I'm impressed when people do that. Even if your hands are tied, or if you have to say no now, but consider it later, I love it when people are bold enough to ask for what they want. And the reason why is people tend to get mad when you can't guess on their behalf. Don't get mad at me because I'm not a mind reader. Manny says this all the time. We're not mind readers. And, and I think that, some women tend to be a little like, he should have known what I wanted. Well, did you say something? So I'm now specific because I had learned that in my own marriage. Like, I don't like this. I think that you think this is what I like because, because I found myself getting mad, and I'm like, you're getting mad because he's not a mind reader. So I learned to stop thinking that people know what you want. Put it out there in a respectful way. And when somebody tells me what they want, whether the answer is yes or no, or maybe, or not right now, I respect the hell out of them. I gotta tell you, I love it. Bring it.
Great marital advice as well.
Right, I'm telling you. Right? It's what keeps marriages going.
Yeah, I hope my wife's listening because I'm not a mind reader.
You're not a mind reader with me? I thought it said that on your resume.
Because we get mad like he should have known. I do think y'all should know sometimes, though. Don't get it twisted.
Yes.
But what I realized, though, is, okay, I'm thinking you should know, and apparently you don't. So let me make it clear. Now, if you're still not listening after I've made it clear, then we're going to have a problem.
Oh, that's too good. Gina, last thing I got for you, with all the things that you do and all the things you have done, in your position now, and we talked about building financial freedom for families, helping business owners, helping others find their voice, others on your team, your community involvement, and those nonprofits that you're involved with. For you, at the end of the day, what really moves the needle? When you sit back and kind of think about everything that you've done, what is most gratifying to you?
I think what's most gratifying to me is that if I left, whether it's I left the room or I've left the company, that I've left my mark. People felt that I was there. I've made a difference. And I think that if I can leave something better than I found it, whether that's a conversation, whether that's a company, whether that's an organization, I feel like I leave a little piece of me behind. And I think that I will be remembered. I feel like every job I've been in or organizations that I've dedicated my time to, I feel like a couple years from now, people will still remember who I am. And I just think, having the ability to leave some sort of legacy or something behind it makes me feel good.
And now, here we are, and this is something I hope our young ladies are really paying attention to, because here we have Gina Coleman here, who's married to the former #1 NBA draft pick. Okay. Now, a lot of people could use that. It's a lot of women around here that just play on that. The trophy wife thing. Mm-hmm. We're at the end of the interview, and that wasn't it. You're your own entity. I mean, you're your own. You're so strong. I mean, you're so, powerful and great in everything that you're doing. So I just want to, mention that, because I love Derek Coleman is like a big brother to me. He's doing a heck of a job in the Detroit community. I see a lot of the mastermind behind some of the stuff he's doing as I talk to you. But how important is it for these young ladies, man? Whether you're married to NBA, NFL, a rapper, just whatever, being your own entity.
Or a president of a corporation.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because when Derek and I first met and he asked me out, I'm like, I don't date people more famous than me. I just had my own thing going on before I met Derek, like walking into New York clubs with the red velvet rope. Like I never had to wait on a line, never had to drop his name. And I just never had that. So when I entered into starting to date him, it was interesting because I've always been very independent. And it comes from, I have a big family. First one to go to college. So I just felt like I was always able to figure it out. And I think, Justin, I shared this with you when I first got married, because I would not have left the Nets. I left the Nets because Derek and I got married and he was playing for Charlotte. And I tried to convince Rod Thorne, my mom, and him, like, can't I see him in the offseason? We play them like they're in our conference, so they play us. Like, why do I have to go move and give up my career? Because it was a job, and I was quite frankly afraid of losing my identity. And not saying just a wife, but the world operates where that's how it feels, right? That's how it shows up, right? And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've always had something on my resume that I was doing, and not that I take anything away from, homemakers or anything like that. I don't. It's just that I thrive in adding myself to other situations, especially corporate America. So my big win as it relates to my marriage to Derek, to DDC, he was on a plane with this very powerful woman in first class, and she's looking at him and she goes, I know who you are. You're married to Gina Coleman. He was like, and when he came home and told me that story, I was like, yes, I finally made my own name here. And it was a surprise to him too. He will tell you this. It was like, wow. And then I'll tell you something else that's interesting. My son Derek Jr., he's 25 now. He said something interesting to me just a month ago. And he says, Ma, you don't know how it is, the pressure to be, being your son. And I said, yeah, I know your dad, I know you're named after him. And he was like, no. He's like an NBA superstar and you're like a corporate superstar. Like I never thought he even saw me that way. Even when I worked for the PNC, I don't think they knew who I was married to. Probably 6 months into I was being there, and because I had to invite him to something, and I had to bring him as my plus one, because I am very independent. But at the same time, I think that, and we're very two opposite people. He complains that I haven't worked for him. He thinks I don't do enough for him. I'm like, you got to either decide, am I going to be your wife or am I going to be your business partner? Because I can't be both. I cannot, because you are very hard-headed. You're not a great client, right? But I will say that it's been a balance for me, Mateen. But at the same time, I'm a part of our NBA Wives organization and lend our hand there, where we have a lot of dynamic women that are making their name for ourselves. But there's a balance because, I don't mind a traditional role as a wife. I like being the caregiver. I like helping the family. And I think that especially when he was in the middle of his career, didn't get into it, my focus was, let me run the house. Let me do what I need. Let me be his queen. I need to be his queen, and I need to be there to support what he's doing. But once he retired, it was game back on for me. And so I'm able to do, so I find him being a plus, like, let me see, honey, if I can get you in. It's just very funny now, but it's great. And I love it, but it can be tricky. It can be tricky, but people know who I am. And
that's right.
We're both married to each other.
That's right. That's right.
And he went to Syracuse. Let's
oh my
be sure
gosh.
to throw that in as well.
Now that is funny because his blue and orange when I worked for PNC was my blue and orange. I'm like, yeah, not the same blue and orange, but when it comes to Syracuse, Justin, I mean, you guys are really like intense about you, and even your blue look, green and white over there, right?
I thought I was one of the biggest Syracuse fans living in the state of Michigan. I can't hold a candle to my husband.
Oh my God, I am so happy I'm not doing this from home. I would have been like, okay, honey, goodbye. This is not your show.
Well, maybe that's another show.
Maybe that'll be another time.
We got plenty of ammo now with some of the.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, this has been fun.
Yeah, absolutely, Gina. You have really blazed a path that is all your own, and you are an example for many out there. So thank you for sharing your story and your insights with us.